Hi, guys. I'm going to read one of my favorite versions of an old story. This is Robin Hood of Sherwood Forest by Ann McGovern. Chapter 1. How Robin Hood Comes to Sherwood Forest. It was a merry May morning, and Robin Hood walked with a bold heart and steps as brisk as the winds that blew through Sherwood Forest. For he was on his way to Nottingham town, where he would test his skill alongside the sheriff's best bowmen at Nottingham Fair. Though this brave, stalwart youth was only 17, as an archer he had no peer in all of England. So Robin's hopes of winning the sheriff's prize of a purse of gold were higher than the floating clouds in the bright May morning sky. Strolling along, he thought of nothing but the coming contest, and of fair Marian, the young maid to whom Robin had given his heart and his pledge. He thought of how her black eyes would gleam when he handed her the prize. Now he whistled, now he sang, now he leapt across the brook, taking care that his stout bow and score of arrows would not tumble, as he ran free as the king's deer in the forest. Then, as Robin came out of the sun-dappled woods into a mossy clearing, he came across a band of 7 foresters, making merry with food and drink beneath a great tree. Their leader wiped a bit of meat from his lips and called out to Robin, "Hallo, young chuck! Why art thou out among the woods, when thou shouldst be home on thy mother's lap?" The others laughed merrily, but Robin's blood ran hot, for he felt himself as much a man as any of them there. "Mark well where I am going," Robin said sharply. "I'm off to the fair to try my bow against such bold and ill-mannered knaves as thou." "Hold thy tongue, sprite," said the head forester, who did not take kindly to Robin's sharp reply. "Try arms with us now, if thou art so certain of thy skill. A purse of silver pennies is thine, if those toy arrows should hit their mark." "Enough said," replied Robin. "Only choose thy target." The forester's grin was wicked. "Aye, but thou hast not heeded the rest of the wager. If thou hit not the mark, I'll baste thy head on both sides." "The wager is made," cried Robin. "My head against the silver pennies." The forester pointed to a crest in the wood, 50 yards distant, where a herd of gentle deer were grazing. "Then pick me down the leader," said the forester. Aghast, Robin cried, "You know these are the king's deer, that it is death to the man who kills one." "Oh, thou art afraid, then," said the forester, notching an arrow. Robin's answer was to bend his bow. A twang of the bowstring, a humming of the goose feather, and the next moment the leader of the herd leaped high, then fell, and straightway blood appeared on its tawny coat. Robin turned to the forester, triumph on his face. "Ho!" cried the forester. "Now thou hast done it, my sorry lad. Thy head will hang for having killed one of the king's deer." "But 'twas thou that challenged me," cried Robin, his face flushing red as the blood on the fallen deer. "But 'twas thou that let the arrow fly," said the chief forester. "Men, seize this rascal." "I'll wager the sheriff will be pleased to see such a pretty outlaw," another forester cried. Thereupon Robin, who had been edging closer to the thicket, turned and dashed into the wood. Deep into the greenwood he ran, when of a sudden an arrow whizzed so close to him that it drew blood from his ear. Another arrow, and still another flew, but fortunately for Robin, all fell wide of their mark. And still he ran until the angry growls of the foresters were swallowed by the trees of Sherwood Forest. Robin sat down, his back against a strong oak tree, as he was overwhelmed by bitter, sad thoughts. Am I doomed, then, to the life of an outlaw, forever hiding in the greenwood? And all because I killed a creature in a forest of the king, the forest that by rights belongs to the people. Aye, it is the foresters themselves who should be in my place this moment, and I should be on my merry way to the fair. Robin sank deeper into gloom, as he thought of all those whom he would see no more, his friends, his cousins, and his dear love Maid Marian, who now surely would never be allowed to see him again. But Robin was made of hearty stuff, and his gloom soon lifted. Fortune such as mine, that falls so low, can only rise again, he said to himself, whereupon he chuckled. So long as I am an outlaw, methinks I should be a worthy one. 200 pounds would be a fair price to set upon this lucky head, he said, stroking the place where the forester's arrow had almost put an end to him. Of a sudden, a rustle in the thicket caused Robin to stiffen. He leaped to his feet, his bow in readiness. Out of the wood stepped 2 men. At the sight of them, Robin gave a glad cry, for he knew them well. One was Midge, the miller's son. The other was Will Stutely, and each had a tale to tell of why he now called Sherwood Forest his home. As Robin listened, his eyes hardened, and anger rose within him, for as the men told their stories, he came to realize what path his fortunes must take him. Life in those olden days was oftentimes cruel and unjust for the good and the poor folk, who were forced to pay large sums of money to the nobles and the rich. High taxes, outrageous rents, and fines made the poor even poorer as they tried to scratch a life out of the fields and forests. Indeed, the laws of the rich were such that whosoever stepped into the king's forest, either to kill a deer to keep his family from starving, or to cut wood to keep them from freezing, was guilty of a crime, and if caught, he could be hanged. So it was that men such as Robin Hood, Will Stutely, Midge the miller's son, and others as honest as these were now outlaws, though truly it was the unjust laws that had made them so. In Sherwood Forest they came to dwell, deep in the green wood where none could find them. There they were safe for a time from the noose of the sheriff's hangman. Before the year was out, a company of 50 brave and stalwart outlawed yeomen came to Sherwood Forest, and chose Robin Hood as their leader. And as all men live better by rules, so did they make strict ones, so that they might help the wronged and at the same time punish the wrongdoing. Each of the 100 men who wore the Lincoln green of Robin Hood's band willingly took these vows, that they would harm no innocent man working with his plow or walking in the greenwood, that knights and squires of good heart would be unharmed, as well as any child or woman, or any man in women's company, that to these they would give help, and would fight to give back that which had been cruelly taken away, that they would bring woe to those fat abbots and cruel nobles, and all who were unjust to the poor, that from these they would take all their ill-gotten gains, that if any man lied or said he had no money when his purse was filled with silver or gold, from this man they would help themselves generously, and that to the evil-hearted sheriff of Nottingham they would give no mercy. And each man who swelled the ranks of Robin's band was true to the vows he took. After a while, much good was spoken of the outlaws by the gentle folk to whom Robin brought food, safety, or help in times of danger. But the greedy rich and those without mercy kept a watchful eye, for they much feared Robin and his merry men in Sherwood Forest. Chapter 2. How Robin Hood Meets Little John. One sweet summer morning, when the birds of Sherwood Forest had just awakened to greet the dawn, up rose Robin Hood and called his merry men around him. "As outlaws we have been idle too long," Robin said. "Today, perchance, I will stir up some adventure." He told his men to tarry in the greenwood, but to listen for his call, 3 notes upon his silver horn. Slinging his quiver of arrows over his shoulder, Robin strode through the green glades of Sherwood Forest, a smile on his lips, thinking of this adventure and that. Not even thoughts of the Sheriff of Nottingham and all his evil ways could dim Robin's pleasure in what might befall him on this summer's day. Finding himself out of the forest, he walked for a while on the road to Nottingham town, where he amused himself by greeting the fair ladies and rosy milkmaids, the peddlers and gallant knights who journeyed along the road. The ones whom he smiled upon readily returned his greetings, for he was strong and handsome, and he made a goodly sight, all clad in Lincoln green, and his deeds had made him known far and wide. But the rich merchants he passed dared not look into his face, for they, too, had heard tales of Robin and his band, and what they heard was not to their liking. After a while, finding no adventure on the road, Robin directed his steps toward a bypath. It led across a brook, spanned by a bridge that was no more than a log. No sooner had he started across than he spied a tall stranger coming from the other side. Thinking to cross first, since the log was only wide enough for one and not the other, Robin quickened his steps. The stranger did likewise. "Go back, you giant fellow," Robin called cheerfully, "or I'll dampen thy great body in this stream." The tall stranger took not a backward nor a forward step, but said, "Nay, only to a better man than myself will I give way." "Then give way, I say," said Robin, drawing an arrow from his quiver, "for I will soon show thee the better man. I have only to bend my bow, and this arrow will hit its mark at thy heart." "Back, ye coward!" cried the stranger. "There ye stand, well armed with a longbow, while I have nothing but this staff in my hand." With that, he took one step forward and raised his staff mightily. Robin took a step back in surprise, for the stranger was at least 7 feet tall, a good foot taller than Robin Hood, and his leg was in truth as thick as Robin's waist. "No one has called me a coward yet," said Robin. "I will lay aside my bow and take myself a staff. Then shall we see if thou art as strong as thy words." Whereupon the outlaw jumped nimbly into the thicket, put aside his longbow and arrows, and cut a stout oaken staff. Then he came back upon the log bridge, and took his stand before the tall fellow. "Set to," cried Robin. "Can ye test my mettle, and live to tell of it?" The birds flew off at the great shout that arose from the stranger as he whirled his staff over his head. He smote Robin a blow that made his bones sing. It was well that Robin was nimble of foot. Such a lusty crack would surely have caused another to lose his balance and fall into the stream. In return, Robin hit the stranger a stinging stroke. Then their staffs flew like lightning for many minutes, and both caught blows from rib to crown that would have felled 3 lesser men. But neither would cry stop, and neither could knock the other off the log into the stream below. For half an hour or more, each stood his place firmly, giving and taking whacks and cracks. Then Robin caught the stranger a blow that made the stout man's head ring. The tall man was thrown off balance, tilting from one side to the other. The log twisted and slipped as he fought to regain his footing. Robin took a deep breath, thinking to strike another blow and so end the merry fight, when the stranger righted himself and swung heavily, fetching Robin such a clout on the head that he fell headlong into the stream. "Forsooth," called Robin, splashing and sputtering, "thou art the best hand with a staff in all Nottingham." "Aye, the best in all of England," cried the winner, who was laughing at the sight of Robin, who was trying to catch hold of some slippery weeds along the banks of the stream. "Marry, yes, in all the world, you great lout," Robin sputtered. "Enough talk, I say. Lend me a hand, for the cold water soaks my bones." Whereupon the stranger stretched down his staff into the water. Robin laid hold of it, and the stranger pulled him out as if he were but a small fish. For a time, Robin lay upon the sun-warmed grass until he could regain his senses. Then, reaching for his silver horn, he blew 3 clear notes. Scarcely had the echo of the call died away in the glade, when came a score of good stout men, all clothed in Lincoln green. "Master Robin," cried Will Stutely, eyeing the tall stranger darkly, "thou art as wet as raindrops. How is this?" "Oh, this stout fellow gave my ribs a cracking they shall not soon forget, and tumbled me into the stream as well," replied Robin. "A plague on him," Will cried. "Now shall he have a ducking as large as his size. Seize him, lads." Robin's eyes twinkled as he commanded, "Nah, do not harm him. The fight was brave and fair." Turning to the stranger, he held out his hand. "Thou art a stout fellow, and will come to no harm. These lads are my loyal bowmen. Come join us, and live thy life among the finest fellows you have ever known. 3 suits of Lincoln green shall you have for thy service, and 40 pieces of gold besides. What say you?" "I do not give my service easily to any man, sir," said the stranger. "Furthermore, if thy skill with bow and arrow is equal to thy skill with a staff, I will follow the fastest road away from here." "Oh," laughed Robin, "thou art as cocky as thou art large." He ordered his men to pin a mark as big as a hand upon a great oak tree some 80 yards away. Next, he ordered a bow for the stranger, and a fine gray goose shaft. "Now, by my faith," said Robin, "if thou canst hit that mark, I shall call thee a true archer." Not a word did the stranger say, but notching an arrow to the string of a bow, he sent it humming to the very center of the mark. A great cheer came up from the merry men, and Will Stutely cried, "Huzzah! I know only one man who can shoot so well. Then Robin took up his own bow and said, "A noble shot, stranger. Indeed, I cannot do better. But perchance I may dislodge your shaft from the mark itself." Without so much as pausing to take aim, he loosed his shaft, and the only sound was the whirring of the arrow until it split the stranger's shaft to splinters. Then all the yeomen cheered their master, but the stranger cheered loudest of all. "Never in all the songs that are sung have I heard of a finer shot than this," he said. "Truly, thou art my better, and I am honored to have a place among thy merry men." "Gaining a good man this day was well worth drinking the fish's water," laughed Robin. "But tell me thy name, stranger." "John Little is what I am called in my own country," the stranger said. Will Stutely laughed and said, "Fair little fellow, thy name fits thee not. With a twist here and there you shall be better named Little John." At this all the merry men roared with laughter, and Little John could not help but laugh with them. "Henceforth shall you be Little John, and my right-hand man, and a merry feast shall there be to welcome thee," said Robin Hood. With Robin leading the way, they all strode into the forest, to the place deep in the greenwood where they dwelt. There they found the rest of the band, some of whom had just returned from hunting, with a brace of fat does. Soon the fires were blazing, and a barrel of ale stood ready. With Robin at the center of the board, Will Stutely at one side, and Little John on the other, there was much singing of songs and feasting that night. With true merriment, all drank to the health of the new member of the band, till the barrel stood empty and the moon rose to replace the light of the sun. But before the merry men went to their leafy beds in the greenwood, all joined hands and made a ring about Little John and Robin Hood. Then loud and long did they cheer the tall yeomen and their beloved master. And thus it was that Robin Hood gained a dunking in the stream, and a loyal man and true, all in the same day. Thanks for listening.